The wind knifed off the ridge and took the breath from his mouth. Gabe Mercer read storms the way other men read ledgers. This one had a hard hand. Pines bowed, ravines filled, and the sky went from iron to chalk. He was angling back toward his cabin, fire set, stew waiting, when a scrap of blue trembled in blown sage, a summer color lost in winter. He went to it without thinking, because a man who lives alone keeps one rule if he means to stay human. Do not pass the living by. The blue was a bonnet. Beneath it lay a woman half swallowed by the drift. Snow bearded her lashes. Her lips were the color of plums in shade. He brushed frost from her face with his glove. "Stay with me," he said in the plain voice a man uses with skittish horses. He bent his ear to her mouth and found a thin, stubborn breath. He lifted her as he would a foundling deer and felt how little there was to her. Bones, wool, and the last of courage. A ribbon inside the bonnet bore a name stitched neat as a promise. E. Whitby. He turned his back to the wind and began the slow work of bringing her in. He followed the creek's cut where rock broke the gale and ice made a hard, bright floor. Twice he stopped to pull her hands inside his coat and breathe on them until feeling woke. Not quitting, he told her, and maybe he told himself. The cabin rose out of the white like a small, stubborn thought. He shouldered the door and let the storm bark in. The room answered with its plain inventory: iron stove, stacked wood, a bed under a quilt pieced from old shirts, a shelf of books no one had asked about in years. He laid her on a bearskin by the hearth and set the kettle on. Mercy has rules. He kept his eyes where they belonged. Her clothes were fine and wrong for the country, a velvet jacket, a city dress dragged through thorns. He cut away the frozen hem and rubbed her hands and feet with a rough cloth until the white gave up pink. He tipped willow bark tea to her mouth. She swallowed, then coughed, then reached for the cup with hands that trembled. "You're safe," he said. "Name's Gabe Mercer." She worked her voice like a door swollen in rain. "Eleanor Whitby." The name matched the ribbon and settled in the room like another piece of furniture. "Miss Whitby, the sky's gone mean. You can stay, till it remembers itself. There are rules here." He hesitated. "First rule, nobody dies if I can help it." Her mouth tried at a smile. "What are the others?" "Work if you're able. Eat what there is. Believe the weather. Don't open the door for ghosts." He spooned stew, elk, potatoes, a little salt, into a tin bowl and held it until her hand steadied. The wind pummeled the eaves. "How far to town?" she asked, studying the rafters blackened with smoke. 2 days when the drifts settle. The nearest ranch is 8 miles if you walk like a crow flies. "I won't be missed by anyone kind," she said, "but I will be looked for." He nodded, not asking. Questions crowd a wild thing. "Then we keep the lamps low." She finished the bowl and let him take it. "Thank you," she said, and it sounded like a vow laid on the table between them. "A man who leaves a soul to the cold ain't worth the fire he burns," he answered. The words sat in the cabin like a law. He gave her the bed and drew up, a chair by the door. Habit had him clean the rifle even when there was no need to leave. She slept the way the hurt sleep, deep, with sudden starts. Once she woke and said, "I left on purpose." "That's a good coat," he said. "Purpose keeps a body warm." She slept again. Gabe banked the fire. The storm wanted all a man's attention. It would take what you gave and more. Near midnight, the wind leaned hard and snow shouldered the door. He checked the latch and listened to the timbers complain. The mountains were a white, indifferent kingdom. The cabin was a small republic that kept its own laws. He kept watch because that was the law he knew. He did not believe in omens. He believed in work. He watched the orange seam along the stove and let the thought settle. The storm would pass, and when it did, the map of his days would not be what it had been on the ridge that morning. Beyond the door, the drifts climbed. Inside, 2 lives learned the same fire together. Snow clawed at the shutters and asked to be let in. Dawn came gray as tin. The day took shape like bread rising under steady patience. Gabe had the fire breathing and the kettle muttering. Eleanor Whitby woke with that small, startled sound people make when they do not recognize a ceiling. "You kept watch," she said. "I had the chair," he answered. "Storm plays tricks, best to have a witness." He poured coffee into a blue cup, chipped and set it on the crate. "I can work," she said, quick, as if the word were a bridge she meant to cross before it burned. "If you'll let me earn my keep." "There's no owing in a life-saving," he said. "But there's plenty to do. The rule says we work if we're able. It's a good rule for strangers sharing a roof." "Tell me the ledger," she said, businesslike. "Stores, tools, what breaks first?" He reached for the book he used to remember what winter liked to make him forget. Flour low, beans fair, coffee light, salt enough, bullets counted, axe sharp. The stove is temperamental in a north wind. Chimney draws if humored. 2 lanterns, oil for 3 nights. Wood for 6 if we're monks, 4 if we're sinners. "Then we'll be monks," she said. "Show me the wood and the way you like." It split. He opened the door to a drift that shouldered back at him. "We'll split inside," he said. "Small work only." She watched how he quartered rounds into neat kindling, the rhythm steady. He set the block and handed her the hatchet. "Your hands won't thank you," he said. "But this heat pays as you go." She tried. The first bite skittered. The second sang. He showed her how to twist a rope of paper, how to stack a fire like a sentence. Tinder, what? Kindling, how? Log, why? "City women learn plenty," she said, "but not this." "Plenty is different everywhere," he said. "A cabin counts differently." He set a pot with water and a crusted heel of salt pork to soften. Eleanor found a tin of dried apples and measured them as if they were coins. She rinsed the cups and wiped the table with a clean, decisive hand. "Thank you for not treating me like glass," she said. "Glass breaks quietly," he said. The wind worried the latch. Gabe checked it and dropped the bar. He showed her the snares on a peg, the sled for mean drifts, the map of trails chalked in his head. "If someone comes," she asked, "do you receive callers in a storm?" "Storms excuse a man from manners," he said, "but not from his code. If it's needed, I open. If it's trouble, I weigh it. If it's both, I make my own weather." She nodded. "I left a house where men made weather for everyone else." "A cabin ain't big enough for lies," he said, and let the subject rest. By midday, the light thinned to pewter. He showed her the shed by a rope line so a person could find the door when the world went white. They brought in carrots, shriveled but good, and a sack of oats. She found a needle in her satchel and mended the torn hem. He shaved curls from a cedar stick and handed her his knife. Her fingers learned the grain. "Make the shavings thin as April ice," he said. "April wasn't thin where I came from," she said. "It was parties and horses and a mother counting futures." "I counted doors," she added. "Most of them closed." They ate with the composure of people who have agreed to the same facts. The storm would not be hurried. The country had a say. 2 strangers could make a working truce. After the bowls were cleaned with the last bite of bread, Gabe set the rifle in its corner and brought down a book on ground and sky. "You read?" he asked. "I read to live," she said. "Words keep the room company without wearing the chairs." Then, "Read," he said, and let her voice braid with the wind. When she paused, she looked over the cup's rim. "What do I owe you, Mr. Mercer?" He shook his head. "Owe me a day of truth. If we deal square, the rest takes care of itself." She thought for a while. "Truth is this. I ran from a promise that wasn't a promise, and men may come calling. It a debt. Then we keep the lamps low," he said, "and we finish our chores." He set a second pallet near the stove and laid another log. Outside, the storm kept talking to the mountain. Inside, the republic held. Work for work, fire for fire, name for name, and no ghosts at the door. The stove coughed, and the room leaned toward the dark. By habit, Gabe was on his knees before the door sagged shut, coaxing the orange seam back with breath and cedar curls. Eleanor steadied the kettle so it didn't rattle off the ring. The wind rasped its argument across the shingles, but the fire answered with a low, convincing word. They made a list finer than the one in the ledger. Small deeds to hold a house together. Melt snow, 3 pails. Stack kindling, 2 armfuls. Patch, the draft with old wool. Oil the hinges, a drop not 2. Measure coffee the way you count prayers, not coins. Eleanor tied her hair with a strip of flannel and took to it as if the chores were a language she already knew. Gabe showed her knots until his fingers remembered they liked teaching. Square, clove, bowline. He set 2 sticks and had her lash. Them a practice pen for shelter if the roof ever quit. She learned quickly. She corrected slips. No apology, only grit. You portion like a trail boss, he said as she weighed oats and set aside what looked too little and proved just right. Portion like a woman who has watched waste, she answered. Plenty breeds carelessness. The cabin took a different order. Tools on pegs, wet things near heat, dry things off. She found a broom of willow and coaxed it into use. The floor showed tracks, but not neglect. She hummed without meaning to, a thin ribbon of sound that made the rafters consider kindness. For the first supper, they cooked together, oatcakes in a skillet, dried apples softening to a cider smell. Stew extended and honest again. They ate without hurry. The storm threw its shoulders against the walls and failed. Color returned to her cheeks. Not a city bloom, but a mountain undertone. Tell me one. Line of your code, she said when the plates were stacked. He thought. Take only what you can carry and only if you intend to carry it. She nodded as if that settled a long quarrel. Mine is smaller. Don't let them name you for you. That one cuts both ways, he said. After the pan was wiped with a biscuit edge, Gabe set his knife to a scrap of birch. Carving keeps the hands honest while the mind walks. A spoon appeared, then a lip, then a shallow bowl fit for tea. He held it out. For your kit, he said. A house is calmer when each person has the tool that is theirs. Eleanor received it like a letter long overdue. Then take this, she said, sewing her flannel strip into a sleeve so his knife would ride safely. Fair trade. They sat with the lamp turned low so the window wouldn't let them. Outside, the drift at the door rose another inch. Inside, names began to mean something besides their sounds. He told her he had planted an apple tree last spring and the frost had blackened it. He would try again. She said her father liked to talk about bloodlines and buildings. Men, she said, who made weather in rooms. Does he count you? Gabe asked. He counts alliances, she said. There was a match intended. He liked the man's money and how it put his name on maps. A map can be a faithful liar, Gabe said. She watched the stove's little window. I won't go back to tempers that decide seasons. You made your own weather, he said. You're here. Evening settled. Gabe went to split a few short rounds from a knot of pine that promised a lesson and kept it. The wedge jumped. His hand glanced. A red mouth opened in his palm. He grunted, surprised not by pain but by error. Eleanor moved without fuss, the way a good nurse rides to a fallen rider. Clean cloth, boiled water, and a touch of salve. Hold still, she said, command and kindness together. She washed the cut until it remembered it was only a cut, then bound it with a firm, practical bow. You've done this before, he said. I've had cause to learn, she answered. City girls collect broken things too. He flexed the hand and found it useful. The fire held its small, faithful center. Debt keeps trying to be born here, he said lightly. I keep turning it away. Then call it even and let it sleep on the porch, she said. They set the watch between them, he first, she second. Before he dozed, he listened to the yow creak under its glass and the wind's steady sermon. The cabin breathing, 2 lives laid out like tools on a bench, each in its place, sharp and ready. The night kept its counsel, less like an enemy and more like a witness. A crack ran through the creek ice like a rifle shot under glass. Gabe and Eleanor looked up. The country was changing its mind. We checked the line, Gabe said. The rope from the door to the shed hummed with drift. He looped it around his arm and handed Eleanor the second loop. No heroics, if I fall you lean, if you fall I lean, that's the sermon. They went into a world narrowed to rope and breath. Snow crawled sideways, the cold bit. At the shed the door buckled its hasp. Inside, Something had worried the oat sack. Fox, Gabe said, reading tracks. Hare in one of the snares, likely. They followed the creek edge. At the third loop, a gray hare thrashed, wire tight on its leg. A shadow with a black tail moved in the white, patient as death. Take the hare, Gabe said, passing her the burlap. I'll mind the thief. Eleanor went to her knees. The heart was a drum in her hands. She thought of parlors and put the thought aside. She pinched the neck where he'd shown her, quick and sure. The tremor left the body. Good, Gabe said. The fox slid closer. He lifted his rifle, sighted, then lowered it. Plenty is a tide. We take what we can carry. He put his shoulder between Eleanor and the fox. Go on, he told it. The fox trotted off with its own business. They turned for home. Halfway to the door, the wind heaved. Eleanor's foot went to nothing. The crust broke. Her leg plunged into a hole that promised to. Gabe felt the rope jar and leaned, boots set. The rope sang. She did not cry out. She set both hands and found the ground again. They went forward slowly, 2 beads on a string, and the porch rose like sense returning. Inside, the stove sulked and the kettle muttered. Gabe set the hare on the board. Eleanor washed in meltwater and reached for the knife. You don't have to, he said. I do, she answered. Somebody stole my old life by small degrees. I intend to own this one by small works. She split the skin clean, peeled it, and freed the feet. Teach me the rest. He showed her cuts that waste nothing. He salted the offal for the trapline, and hung the pelt. The room smelled like a promise kept. When the soup took the hare's news and improved by it, Gabe lifted the latch. The wind had turned from fury to labor, a tired animal still dangerous. Your hand, she said, catching his wrist. The cut had pulled. She changed the cloth and steadied the edge with one firm stitch. Keep it clean, or the mountain will put its own marks on you. What marks did the city put in you? He asked. Names I don't answer to, she said. They ate hare and oatcakes and drank weak coffee like feast day. After, he poured a pinch of salt into his palm. Salt is memory, he said. It keeps what ought to last. And the wrong kinds? She asked. They keep you from healing. She looked at the rope burn where the drift had tried to take her. Then I'll keep the right ones. The afternoon went pewter. Gabe took down rawhide and showed her how to braid a lead. If the storm breaks tomorrow, we may ride to see what the river did to the ford. She braided with the patience of someone passing a test no one set. When I was small, she said, I learned scales and place settings. No one taught me a rope except as something to hold while stepping into a carriage. Ropes have other uses, he said. They hold, and they release. Toward evening, the wind sagged. They shoveled the drift from the door before it froze to a law. The sky showed a seam, pale as the inside of a shell. For a minute, the mountain let them see it honest. Black fur, white fold, the creek under glass with its crack like a vein. Back, inside, they set wet things near the heat, dry things off, and banked the fire like money saved for morning. Words thinned as work finished. The quiet was not empty. It was full of what had been done. Eleanor read a page about stars guiding men. As surely as men are guided by stars. She closed the book. I think I could live by small, clean rules. You're living by them now, Gabe said. A long gust rattled the shingles and then passed. The stove sighed. Night chose its shape, and the two of them kept the small republics, laws without needing to say them twice. Outside, the creek held its breath. Inside, 2 strangers kept each other honest through the storm. The lamp guttered and told the truth. After supper, Gabe set the flame low so it wouldn't write their lives onto the dark. Eleanor folded the quilt corner with that square, competent motion he had come to recognize. You said debt was a thing you won't keep indoors, she said. I have carried a ledger like a chain. You can set it down here, he answered. A cabin is honest about what it can hold. She considered the flame. My father priced my winter. A man named Harrow offered to pay it. He would lay his name over mine like a brand on wet hide. I smiled and said the words expected, then I ran. Pride may float a life, Mr. Mercer, but it sinks one if you chain iron to it. Harrow will come for what he thinks is his. Men like him don't hunt alone, she said. They hire the weather. Gabe turned his palm, her stitch neat, the wound clean. Weather breaks, he said. Codes don't, if they're any good. What broke yours? She asked, quiet as a prayer not meant for the gallery. He did not tell the story often. I had a wife, he said, Ruth, a boy born in the spring when the river ran kind. Fever took them in a week. The country was still beautiful the day after. I came to a ridge where beauty and wrong could live in the same sentence. Eleanor's face did not rearrange into pity. She lowered her eyes. So you swore off company, she said. I swore off fool's promises, he answered. A man can get proud of solitude until it turns him mean. He looked at the spoon he had carved for her. Then a blue ribbon on a bonnet asked for my better self. The wind softened to a long breath. Ice fell from the eaves and broke like quiet glass. Eleanor reached for the kettle. He reached for the same handle. Their fingers met, warm as a found rock in river sun. They stopped, cautioned by the fact of being alive in the same square of light. I won't borrow a tenderness I can't repay, Gabe said, stepping aside. And I won't trade shelter for vows under duress, she answered. But I won't. Lie and say I don't feel the room change when you stand. The room knows arithmetic, he said. 2 lives make more heat than 1. They poured tea. He tied a strip of buckskin over the red rope burn at her wrist, a band as plain as a thought that meant to last. We keep the lamps low, he said, not because we're ashamed, because the mountain has eyes, and it carries stories farther than town. What else do we keep? Hands clean, words exact, he said, and we keep tomorrow out of tonight unless invited. She smiled, tired and certain. Invite one thing. If the weather lets up, take me to see the line of your world. I'd like to read the creek and meet that apple tree you accused of giving up. It holds its ground like a small soldier, he said. You'll like each other. He checked the latch, the coals, the nail-hole chink. Stars had begun making their careful case against the storm's last argument. Your code? She asked from the bed, voice low. Don't pass the living by, he said. Don't summon the dead for advice. Fix what you use. Leave a place, kinder than you found it, even if you're the only one who will know. My turn, she said. I won't answer to a name not given in kindness. I won't let a rich man's temper tell me the temperature. If my fear wakes first, I'll put it to work. Those will stand, he said. We'll write them in the morning. They lay with the stove's heartbeat between them. The cabin spoke in tick and sigh, wood settling, iron remembering heat. When sleep came, it was not flight but anchoring, 2 ropes on the same cleat. Somewhere past midnight, a fox barked. Somewhere nearer, a horse stamped where no horse ought to be. Gabe sat up, listening. The sound came again. Iron kissed to iron, faint as a coin turned in a glove. He laid a hand on the rifle. What is it? Eleanor asked, already upright. Maybe wind playing at the harness, he said. Maybe a traveler who lost his sense. Maybe a question. What do we answer? Not tonight, he said. Tomorrow we go see what the country has written, on our doorstep. They slept at last. The lamp steadied. Outside, stars took the ravine one by one, and the mountain recovered its old face. Inside, they learned the shape of restraint and found it fit like good work clothes. Plain, strong, and theirs to wear by choice. The wind died as if it owed them something. Morning found a sky scrubbed blue. Drifts held like quiet cattle. Firs stood dark. Gabe stepped out with the shovel and read the yard like a letter from home. Along the aspens, hoofprints walked to the storm's edge and ended where wind closed the page. Someone came close, he said when Eleanor joined him, scarf tied snug. Shod horse, boots beside it, they stood and listened. Did they knock? They let the wind do it. They ate oatcakes and the last of the apples, then set to harness. The roan shook steam from his nose. Gabe tightened the cinch and tied a short lead from his horn to a butter-colored mare kept at the neighbor's line corral. Eleanor stepped into split trousers she'd stitched from a blanket. It was practical defiance. The mountain approved. We go to Hobbs's. Gabe said, oil, flour, salt, and to let the valley know you stand under my roof by choice. Gossip runs faster than horses. Better to give it the right map. They followed the creek to a small valley where fences wrote straight poetry. Hobbs's place, a low house, wind-leaned, barn a storeroom, Mrs. Alma Hobbs guarded like a fort. Gabe swung down. Morning, Alma. Morning, Mercer. And Miss? Eleanor Whitby, Eleanor said, standing square. Winter brought me in. Mr. Mercer offers shelter. We aim to keep the rules that keep neighbors. Alma's eyes were sharp but not unkind. Then warm your hands on the kettle, she said. Two men sat with mugs, hats in hand, respectful and measuring. Gabe laid a hair pelt and a small carved bowl on the counter. Trade. Flour, if you can spare, lamp oil, a bit of salt. Alma weighed the pelt, thumbed the bowl's lip. Fair, she said. I can spare what you named, and if Miss Whitby would look at Caleb's coat sleeve, caught it on the gate, it would save me a quarrel with the needle. Gladly, Eleanor said. She set neat, sturdy stitches that would not give. The men watched without pretending not to. The room settled around the public proof of her hands. A rider stamped snow from his hat. Jeb Lathrop carried news the way the creek carried melt. Roads rough to town, he told the room. Sheriff's laid up in Willow Bend, but deputy, hard as riding. Two strangers went south ahead of the storm, talked big and quiet. One had city shine on his boots. They bought cartridges like a sermon. Eleanor did not look up. Names? Didn't leave any. Gabe felt the room take its vote and cast it silently. He topped the oil by a finger. Alma set a loaf on the counter and did not count it in the ledger. That's neighbor law, she said, when he reached for coins. Argue in spring. She pressed a shawl, thick and dark as good earth, into Eleanor's hands. Wear this home. The mountain is bright. No use letting it read too much of you. Thank you, Eleanor said simply. I'll repay in work. You already have, Alma answered, nodding at the sleeve. Outside, the sun glanced off ice and made the plain world shine. Gabe cinched the sacks. Eleanor set a hand to the mare's neck and breathed the cold like medicine. They started back, at a walk, letting the horses find earth under the sugar crust. At the ford, the creek had formed new banks. Gabe studied its mood. We go upriver and cross at the downed pine, he said. Safety doesn't argue, it informs. They made the bend under cliffs where ravens wrote black notes on blue. On the narrow shelf, Eleanor's knee brushed Gabe's boot. Neither pulled away. Thank you for today, she said. It mattered to stand upright before faces. The mountain is wide, he said. A life is smaller. It needs witnesses. Then, witness this, she said, simple as a cup set down. I do not regret your door. He opened his mouth and then closed it. The roan slipped, recovered. The moment passed but did not leave. They crossed at the pine and took the home trail. At the last rise they saw it, a thin column of smoke on a ridge where no line cabin sat. Not a cook fire. A sign. Scouts, Gabe said, or men who think themselves that. Will they come tonight? They'll come when weather and temper agree, he said. We'll be ready with our small laws and our open eyes. The horses blew softly as if agreeing to the terms of peace today. They rode on. Inside, the fire woke easily under their hands. Outside, the bright day wound down like a clock. Their quiet republic had been seen and, for now, accepted. Whatever came next would have to reckon with witnesses. The rope line lay in 2 clean pieces at daybreak. Gabe found the cuts clean as decisions. No fray, no iced here. Steel work. Eleanor stood beside him with the shawl Alma had pressed into her hands. The mountain had a blue, brittle look, honest and dangerous. Pressure, Gabe said. Not storm, men. What do they want? She asked. Not you exactly, he said. They want what claiming you does. Proof a rich man's wish is law. They checked the yard. The latch had scratches. A snare was sprung and left with the rabbit gone. Wire twisted in a way that said, we were here. On the porch rail, someone had set a pebble atop a chip of quartz, the kind of sign planes riders used when they meant to speak without paper. Eleanor lifted it and showed the pale flash. Harrow hires men who like to leave sermons. Gabe reset the line with fresh rope and tied 3 new loops higher tighter. He put sand in a pan by the door to catch prints. Antagonists are lazy artists, he said. They repeat themselves. They walked the creek. In a bend where firs took the wind's bite, hoof marks milled and then disappeared across stone. A scrap of city paper caught in willow torn from a ledger. Ink bled by snow. 2 words still legible. Whitby. Obligation. Obligation is a word that pretends to be honorable, Eleanor said. It isn't when it's printed to excuse a theft. They turned home. Gabe's jaw worked like he was grinding a problem into a meal. We make the cabin ready, he said. We make our case clean. Hart will ride through this week. Law is a man and a badge. We'll need both. They stacked wood where it would not burn a man's hand in a hurry. They drew water and set buckets by each corner. He showed her how to wedge shutters and leave a thumb-width seam to see by. She set the lamp with its wick trimmed to a modest, useful light. Small laws, she said, steady. We keep them, and they keep us. Afternoon, they saw them properly. 3 riders on the East Ridge, black against the snow like crows that had learned saddles. The one in the center sat easily, reins held like a pen. He lifted a hand and touched the brim of his hat with 2 fingers, a gesture that had bought more than it paid for in town rooms. Harrow, Eleanor said. Not a question. Gabe did not wave. He set his hand open on the door jamb, as if he were swearing to bricks. The riders did not descend. They burned a little line of fire where they were and let the smoke point like an arrow. Message received. They're measuring you, Gabe said. They're measuring us, she corrected. And they'll come when the world gets thin enough for cowards to think themselves brave. He almost smiled. Toward dark then. They did not spend the afternoon in dread. Work is a wall. He braided a better lead. She packed a small sack with bread, salt, the spoon he had carved, and a note to Alma in case they had to run the high trail and leave proof of their side. She wrote in a hand that made the truth look inevitable. When the sun slid, they ate early. Gabe checked the rifle and the pistol he kept because men sometimes needed persuading when words failed. Eleanor wound a scarf over her hair and tucked it into the shawl so only her eyes read the room. If talk is offered, we talk, Gabe said. If paper is waved, we read it by our own lamp, not theirs. If they push the door, we push back. And if they try to put a rope on my name, we cut it, he said. As dusk took the draws, a single shot sounded from the ridge, struck the bucket by the well and made a silver bell of it. Sound rolled down the slope, careless and precise. Pressure, Gabe repeated. Not storm. Men. He doused the lamp with a coin and moved to the window's seam. Eleanor settled by the stove, not hiding exactly, but choosing her ground. The small republic tightened its borders and waited for negotiations to begin. A voice slid down the slope like a banker's pen. House papers for Miss Eleanor Whitby, guardianship and promise. I'll escort her to town. Gabe answered. Leave your paper on the threshold and step back 10 paces. We'll read by our lamp. Silence, then a laugh. We'll read it together, neighbor. He doesn't want me, Eleanor said. He wants the bow. That's his weather, Gabe said. Ours holds. Hooves shifted. Lanterns moved, like fox eyes. The bucket kept ringing. They let the lamp stay small and faced the door. A stone tapped the window with a liar's patience. Gabe set a finger to his lips and moved to the seam in the shutter. Eleanor stayed by the stove with the kettle ready. Outside, lanterns pooled yellow on the snow. 3 men sat on their horses. A 4th stood on the porch with a paper held high. Read, neighbor, the porchman called. Guardianship and promise signed and sealed. We take Miss Whitby kindly and lawfully. Set it down and step back, Gabe answered. 10 paces. Leather creaked. The man laughed and slid the paper under the door with the toe of his boot. Gabe fetched it with iron tongs. He laid it on the table and weighed 2 corners with bullets so the draft wouldn't make it speak untrue. Eleanor bent to the page. "Father's hand," she said, "but not his date. This is autumn. I am of age by November, and the county seal they copied is wrong. The wheat stalk crosses are left." She tapped the wax. "Cold ring, stolen crest." Gabe read the witness. "Sign. Names that don't belong to this valley," he said. He looked to the door. "Paper lies," he called. "Law rides with Deputy Hart. We'll show him when he comes." Boots shifted. The porchman's voice thinned. "Hart rode north. I am the law that found you." "You are the weather a rich man hired," Eleanor said. A lantern arced and burst on the rail. Gabe was there with a bucket. Eleanor handed another. Water turned it to steam. A shot rang from the ridge, clean, aimed shaving tin from the spout. "Message," Gabe said. A second voice, oily, familiar from the store, called, "Mercer, hand her over and keep your roof." Gabe marked the voice private and set it aside like a debt to reckon later. They let the lamp sit on a coin. When the men tried the door, they found it stubborn. When they tried a shutter, Eleanor wedged it with a chair leg and 2 nails. A hand came through a slat. The rifle butt answered. 1 clean strike. The hand left a smear and went away, cursing. Shot came low through the gap and shaved splinters from the table. Gabe pulled Eleanor down behind the trunk. "Count breaths," he said. The stove kept its small heartbeat. Silence can be a trick. The next volley came hard at the hinge. The door jumped. Gabe answered with a single round into the eave where a shadow leaned. The shadow fell, shaking snow from the roof. The horses stamped. "Cost," Eleanor said. "Night takes her due," he said. He reloaded slowly. "Exactly. But she doesn't set the price." They heard a man run to the corral, a rail creak, a hatchet ring. Wood gave up with a cry. "Apple tree," Gabe said. Eleanor closed her eyes. "You'll plant again," she said. They held. The men tried a rush. 3 shapes, porch to door. Gabe waited until their boots hit the boards together and fired into the jam above them. Wood spat and men scattered. Eleanor sloshed water where an ember sneaked under the sill. She moved as neat as a nurse, fierce as the rule she'd chosen, put fear to work. A bullet found Gabe's shoulder like a bad memory. Heat bloomed, his left arm dulled. He sat with it a second, honest about pain, then grinned. "That's mine," he said. Eleanor's hands were on him, cloth, pressure, the calm of someone who will not let a body go if she can help it. "Through and clean," she said. "Hold pressure, breathe with the stove." He breathed. The porchman spoke again, slick coat gone. "This is foolishness. She belongs where she was placed. She belongs where she is held in honor," Eleanor called, and the wind nailed her words to the door. The night stretched and then sagged. Men tire. One cursed the cold. Another muttered that the deputy would come in the morning. Boots scraped, retreated. A last shot nicked the post like a signature, and hoofbeats ticked away into the dark. They waited until quiet proved itself. Eleanor lit the lamp full, not as a boast but as a counting of the living. She cleaned the wound and bound it with linen torn from her city blouse. Gabe's face loosened under her sure hands. "We held," he said. "We witnessed," she answered. He looked at the apple stick they'd rescued, cut in 2 lengths, sap already sealing. He set the halves side by side. "I'll graft in spring," he said, and nobody argued with hope. They slept in shifts. The cabin had new scars and kept standing. Outside, frost took back the places where men had tried to write their names. The creek went on under its glass. The mountain made ready for daylight. Gray thinned toward a careful dawn. Dawn stepped over the ridge like a judge with no patience for talk. Gabe woke to hard blue that showed every mark men had made. Prints bragged in the yard. The cut rope lay in 2 neat tails. "We close the book," he said, tightening his sling. "Daylight wants facts." "Facts are a map," Eleanor said. "Let's draw one that leads them wrong." They walked to the creek bend where the ice had cracked days before. Snow lay smooth over it, a white lyre with thin places. Gabe set his boot and felt hollowness. He looked to the black spruce and the narrow shelf under the cliff. "We hang a rope there," he said, "hip high. Horses hit it, men go down. We pull them out because we keep our code. But they'll be wet and honest. I'll be the lure," Eleanor said. "You'll be our weather." They worked quietly. Gabe tied knots meant to hold. Eleanor sifted snow over the line so it read as ground. They fastened the ends to 2 sprung saplings. Above, Gabe made a blind of brush. His rifle lay easy, though his left shoulder burned. Eleanor saddled the roan and left the mare high. "If they shoot, ride the shelf," he said. "If they press, lead them to the bend. I'll cut when their cinches meet the line." She touched his good hand. "We don't pass the living by," she said, giving him back his own law. Hooves took the ridge before the sun cleared the firs. Harrow rode center, 2 men flanking, a 4th nursing a bruised hand. They saw the cabin door open and the woman in the shawl ride out at a steady walk. "Miss Whitby," Harrow called. "Come down, sensible." She let the wind carry her answer. "I go where I am held in honor." "Take her," he snapped. They came in a showy half-charge. Eleanor kept the pace that invites foolishness. She reached the shelf. The rope found. Purchase. She crossed where rope met air and felt nothing. The men behind did not see the saplings quiver. Their cinches met the hidden bar. The first horse folded, sending its rider into a slide of arms and oaths. The second went sideways. The boot hung in a stirrup. Harrow's mount checked hard, went to its knees, and flung him long onto thin ice where the old crack waited. "Now," Gabe said, and cut. The sapling snapped back. The line released. The ice sighed and split. Harrow went through to his chest, cursing, strangled by cold. The others windmilled on bellies, guns skittering. Gabe slid down, boots finding truth under powder. He tossed, a coil to the nearest man. "Hold," he said, and heaved. Eleanor swung from the saddle, planted like a post, and hauled with him. They pulled the first gasping rider to the shelf. She kicked his gun away without drama. Harrow thrashed. Pride makes a poor life jacket. "Mercer," he barked, "you'll hang for this." "I don't hang men for their mistakes," Gabe said. "I keep them from drowning." He threw the free end of the rope. Harrow stared, then took it. They pulled him from the black mouth. He knelt and coughed up the creed of men who think they own the weather. "Your paper is forged," Eleanor said. "The seal is wrong. The date makes me younger than I am. The witnesses live 3 counties east. You brought theft dressed as guardianship." Harrow tried to square himself. "Your father, my father's not here," she said. "I am." The 4th man, the one with a storekeeper's voice, got a pistol under his hand. Gabe put a bullet through the snow a foot in front of the barrel. The man reconsidered. Eleanor tied his wrists with the rawhide lead she had braided. "On your feet," Gabe told them. "We'll meet Deputy Hart on the road or at Hobbs's. We'll give him your names while they're shivering and true." Harrow's eyes cut to the cabin, to the apple stick on the sill, to the shawl on Eleanor's shoulders. He read a map that did not have him on it. "We won with work," Eleanor said, "and with witnesses. The valley saw me upright yesterday. Today it sees you wet with a false paper in your pocket." They started toward the valley, 2 on foot, 1 limping, Harrow walking as if ice still held his knees. The morning rang, like iron. From the far ridge a single rider broke free of the trees. A bay, a long coat, a badge bright as noon even in early light. "Deputy Hart," Gabe said. "Law," Eleanor answered, and the word sounded like relief hammered into shape. Harrow swallowed and said nothing. The day had its witness, and so did they. Boots spoke truth into the snow. The badge flashed once, and the valley changed its mind. Deputy Hart rode tidy, brim level, a calm man who let facts take their own shape. He pinched the wax on the paper, breathed a quiet that worked like a plow through frost. "Seals, wrong," he said. "Witnesses aren't this county's. Date makes a woman a child. Mr. Harrow, I'll hold this as evidence and hold you as well." He turned to Gabe. "Mercer, you kept the peace with a firm hand." I kept my roof, Gabe said. And her name. Hart faced Eleanor. Miss Whitby, you stand free until a judge says otherwise. If there's a hearing, you'll have your say in a room that listens. I have my say now, she answered. I am not a ward or chattel. I am a woman on my own ground. That'll do, Hart said. He bound Harrow's hands with a rope that didn't apologize. The others he collected with the same clean motion a rancher uses gathering stock through a wrong gate. They walked to Hobbs's together, law at the center like a steady stove. Alma read the scene in one sweep and put coffee on while Hart wrote. Eleanor set the forged paper by the county register Alma kept. Hart compared seals and made the difference plain with 6 tidy strokes. Mercer, he said, my office is a day north. I'll send it to the sheriff at Willow Bend. You'll get a summons if any Whitby wants to argue before a bench. Meanwhile, your cabin keeps its rules. Harrow tried one last angle. Her father isn't here, Hart said. You rode papers and gunfire through a storm. That's not guardianship, that's an insult. Jeb Lathrop led the prisoners down valley at an honest walk. Alma pressed a biscuit into Eleanor's hand and touched Gabe's good arm. You come back for the wedding, she said. They rode home, late, light, thin, and true. The apples stuck on the sill through small shadows. Gabe eased into the chair by the door and let the quiet take his weight. Deputy Hart makes the air straightforward, Eleanor said. Straight air lets a man breathe, he answered. Days grew longer by spoonfuls. The graft took. The creek wore through its glass. A letter came with a proper seal. Eleanor's father wrote in a tone that tried to be thunder and settled for weather. You have embarrassed this house. She replied on plain paper, I have built one. One clear morning, they rode to town. The church was small and white. Alma stood, as witness, and Deputy Hart signed the line beneath. Gabe spoke the simple vow a man can keep. Eleanor answered with the plain assent of someone who has measured words and chosen the ones that fit. They went home, the husband and wife across a country that looked the same and wasn't. Work met them at the door and took its places. In spring, they set posts for a bigger room under the same roof. In summer, a colt dropped and stood on long, surprised legs. Another followed. The herd took a shape that might, if weather and luck agreed, mean a breeding venture honest enough to buy flour without pelts. Neighbors came by more often. Men borrowed tools and returned them. Women brought jars. Children watched the apple tree like it had invented fruit. When harvest came, they cut the first small red and ate it half each, grinning like thieves forgiven. On a cold evening, Gabe carved and Eleanor read, and sometimes they traded roles. Once at the table, he caught her hand the way a man catches, a truth without flourish, with gratitude. She left her hand where it lay. What do we keep, she asked one night. The rules that saw us through, he said. Don't pass the living by, fix what you use. Don't let tomorrow's boss tonight honor names. Leave a place kinder than you found it. And we keep faith, she said. Not the painted kind, the kind you can ladle. Snow would come. Again, and law would ride its rounds. But the cabin's republic had deepened into a country with 2 names on the deed and 1 fire. Around them, horses breathed warm in winter. In summer, the foals learned their legs. People in the valley told how a city heiress met a mountain man in a whiteout and both of them kept their weather. Some said luck, others said work. The truth knew both. If you passed that way at dusk, you might find the lamp trimmed low and 2 silhouettes at the table, and know this story kept its own history. Fire banked, vows plain, weather chosen together. They had chosen it, and it kept choosing them, season by season, work by work, until even storms learned to pass by. Drop one small rule you keep in the comments, then hit like and subscribe. New Western romances each week.